How are you?
I'm very good. Put in a little 5 mile run after dropping the kids off, so
Oh my God.
that's ideal. That's actually what counts as a short run for me these days.
Really? You're
Yeah,
that guy?
I yes. I'm absolutely that jackass who's always out like in the shorty shorts or the tights, just running 7, 8, 9 miles,
Uh-huh.
miling.
Wow. Well, I'm always the jackass in the car going, whistling. That's not true. That's gross.
No, my friend Mike, I was running up through his neighborhood because his neighborhood, okay, I'm this guy. His neighborhood has this really great hill, just this fantastic incline.
Hmm.
It gets steeper as you go, and that's the kind of thing that drives me. And I was running up his neighborhood
Nice.
up that hill, and he was driving down and he saw me. And then later he's like, "You were smiling so big." I'm like, "I didn't even know it."
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm not a runner, but I am a walker, and I
Yeah.
absolutely need to have that to like start my day or shake off the day or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, I feel that. If I don't get that, because I alternate between running and weightlifting, like I don't do days off because I don't feel right if I take a day off.
Yeah.
It's as much about transferring my addictive habits to something healthy as it is about feeling right.
Are you prone to addictive habits, Corby?
Yeah, I'm actually sober three years now and clean nearly 3 years
Oh
now.
my God, that's amazing. Congratulations. That's awesome.
So,
Well, before we're nattering on, I ought to introduce you. I know you because I basically stalked you and begged you to interview me, which you did several times very kindly when you were working for the Indie. And you're still a journalist now, I see. You're still writing yeah.
correct. Yeah,
And
I'm full time at Duke now. I write for Duke's Alumni Magazine, so I actually get paid a decent living to write, which doesn't
oh
happen.
my God, that's incredible. I'm
Yeah,
so envious. That's awesome.
I'm one of like four people in America who makes a living as a writer.
Totally.
I don't know
That's
how that
great.
happened, but whatever.
Well, you earned it. You put in the hours for sure and the miles, speaking of running. Well, I don't know if you know the sort of underpinnings of this particular video, but it's about people who have been through stuff and maybe the challenges that they experienced, and why live? Life is hard.
Right.
Yeah. You know, so I know you've been through some stuff. Are you willing to talk about that?
Of course. I mean, that's the reason that I answered your call out on Facebook, is because just the basis of it is I have chronic leukemia.
Hmm.
I've had it twice. I still have it. So it's funny the language. It's like it's chronic, so it never goes away, but it's
Hmm.
asserted itself twice.
Okay.
Um, I got it at 35, and it's a kind of chronic leukemia that people don't usually get until like they're in their 70s. And so
Wow.
getting it in your mid 30s doesn't even show up on statistical models. Um,
Dang.
and so, it's in there. It's quiet right now. It's under
Hmm.
control, but
Hmm.
it's always going to be there. And like actually in between my two bouts of leukemia, my wife got breast cancer also at 35,
Whoa.
and so
Jesus.
we spent the second half of our 30s just pummeled by cancer,
Oh
back to
my
back
God.
to
Oh my
back.
God.
And so I'm 41 now. My last go with cancer was in when I was 39, and that one was harder than the first one in some ways
Mm.
because I was just about to turn 40, and like my some friends of mine were like dying right and left, and
Mm.
it was just this really dark time where I was like, I'm not going to make it to 40.
Hmm.
And most of my friends are like in their 40s or above, and so I never viewed 40 as some kind of like, oh, over the hill, like that old fashioned bullshit. 40 was just fun, me getting into the decade my friends are in, and I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
not going to see 40, so
Wow.
you know
What was that like? I mean, to know that or to
it,
feel that. I mean, clearly you didn't know that.
it was, I don't know, it was like some of the light being sucked out of the universe. It was
Hmm.
like just kind of the ceiling of hope got a lot lower.
Mm.
It was just like swimming against this tide of inevitability.
Wow.
It didn't really, even though like I got on a new therapy um in 2021, because that was in 2021, even though I got on a new therapy that started working and is still working, it wasn't until I actually hit my 40th birthday that started to kind of lift. Because we think in terms of linear time, even if linear time doesn't really exist.
Hmm.
We think in those terms. We think in these clean boxes of this year, this decade.
Hmm.
And so in my mind, I it didn't really feel like I was out of the woods until I hit that birthday.
Right. Right. Yeah, we sort of think in terms of charts, like
Yeah,
graphs
yeah,
and charts. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And that not knowing, that's wow. So your wife and you both had cancer at the same time. And you have
yeah,
kids, right? You have
yeah. Two girls. So
mhm,
I was 35 when I first got leukemia, and that was the summer of 2017, and this was right before my younger one started kindergarten.
mhm,
So they were little, and you know then 11 months later, my wife got sick. And then the 10-year-old was 5 when I first got cancer. And so that's like, I think more than half her life at this point, about how like she probably can remember a time before, but I don't think she can remember the experience of a time before. Cancer is just like a default in the household. And that's like,
mm,
if you haven't lived with it, that can sound kind of oppressive, but it isn't. I mean, it's almost like living with the awareness of, like, it's almost like being an animal living with the awareness of predators. It's like,
mhm.
I know there's a predator that you know can kill me. I'm a rabbit. I know that coyotes exist. It's kind of like that.
Well, and if you're an addict or an alcoholic, I mean, that's a potentially lethal disease if you don't watch it.
That's a good
So,
point.
so that's always I mean, for me, that's always in the room. But I mean, it doesn't have the sort of social gravitas that cancer does. I mean, cancer is,
Well, and that's the
it's
thing is
not
I
just social, it's like physical,
yeah,
reality.
yeah, and that's the thing is like I like being very, very open about it, you know, but it's always like, if it's someone who doesn't know that I have cancer, it's always there's always the risk that it's going to be heavy when I tell them, and I don't want it to be heavy because that gives it more power than it already has. And I mean,
Hmm.
you and I both know that cancer already has incredible power.
Yeah.
We don't need to also give it extra psychological power. It's going to have psychological power, but we don't need to give it more.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, that gravitas, as someone who's lived with it for 5.5 years now, I kind of I kind of try to like minimize it. You know,
Hmm.
it doesn't do me, who's the person who's at additional threat from it, who's the person who's gone through it twice, 3 times in the family. It doesn't do me any favors for it to always feel heavy.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know,
How do you minimize it? How do you keep it from just being a seat at the table instead of being like at your neck?
I talk about it.
Hmm.
Like I talk about it and I make sure that I talk about it like with a full range of expression and emotions, everything from here's what I'm scared about to here's something funny that happened when I was at the hospital, to like,
Hmm.
oh, this thing's annoying, oh, here's somebody, here's one of the nurses who I really like. Like, I
Hmm.
try to like express the full range of it. And I've learned to live in the moment.
Mm.
you
Wow.
know and we were talking about like, addiction. I was actually addiction is not my word. I was dependent. I've got
Dependent. Okay.
dependency issues, and so like, when I was drinking or when I was like getting high, it's funny because like you think about weed as like an anti-anxiety med, but weed actually made it easier for me to get into like anxiety spirals.
I don't think of it as
Which is not,
anti-anxiety at all.
well, people want, I think that it should be legal,
Yeah.
but the legalize it crowd wants it to sound like a miracle drug, which
Yeah.
is as dishonest as the whole like, reefer madness crowds thing.
Right. Right. Right.
And they're all about, oh, anti-anxiety, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I would go in like these anxiety spirals where not only would I think about like, my own mortality, but I would go into like a full-on anxiety spiral where I would like start thinking about like the heat death of the universe and stuff like
Wow.
so far future,
Full.
like, and that's
Right. Why stop there?
exactly. Um, yeah. So like actually getting clean was a big step towards like living fully in the moment. Like we're right
Mm,
now,
hmm.
I've gotten that to where it's foundational enough to like my life to where if I even start to worry, if I even start to think, oh, my cancer will come back. Oh, I'm
Hmm.
only going to get older and then I'm going to die. Oh, this crazy thing could happen. It's almost like a computer program where
Mm,
my mind will go, is that happening now? No, move on. And then that's it.
hmm.
The
Hmm.
worry doesn't take over because my mind goes, is that happening now? No, you're in this moment. Boom.
Hmm.
I live in now, which is a lot easier as a clean and sober person.
Hmm. Well, you have I mean, with cancer, you have a kind of black belt in that being in the moment. Like most of us have to work so hard at that, like let it go, or that's not happening now. Like that's how I talk myself off any ledge that I find myself on. Like what's happening now? But it takes a lot of practice and a lot of really letting go. And I imagine, I mean, you just have a really strong place of doing that.
Well, practice is the way to put it.
Mm.
It's such, it sounds like a cliche. It sounds like such a buzzword, but the practice of mindfulness, that's the word
Hmm.
for it.
Hmm.
Um, it's funny, but I learned about it through work. I did a story on, it's funny, it's like this guy who's graduated from Duke now, but
Hmm.
he used sleight of hand, so like card tricks as mindfulness practice. And when I got assigned the story, I was like, okay. So I went and I met the guy. I really like him. And
Uh-huh.
one of those instances where I went to the story with preconceptions and was
Hmm.
totally wrong and came away with some stuff that was really useful to my life and remains useful.
Hmm.
And I met the head of Duke's wellness program, Do Well, really cool,
Mm. Hmm.
Tom Gethy. And he explained like mindfulness to me as, and I was in the back of my mind, I was not in a great place, because I'd been like underemployed and unemployed and like freelancing and everything before I got my Duke job. And it was rough, that
Hmm.
plus cancer. I mean, everything was just like,
Mm.
I recognize now that I was in a bad place, but at the time, you don't know. You don't know when you're in survival.
You got cancer when you were underemployed?
Yeah.
Shit, Corbie.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Oh yeah, there are so many layers to it.
Oh
Yeah,
God.
so like I finally got to a stable position.
Hmm.
I didn't realize that when you leave emergency mode or leave survival mode, all those emotions and all those fears and stressors that you've been holding back, they just come flooding in.
Mm.
And so, my first few months at my first like stable salaried job where I was making a living, and it wasn't like, oh, how are we going to eat?
Mm.
Um, so yeah,
Wow.
but yeah, anyway, so like this is my mindset going into this story, but I wasn't acknowledging it because I didn't know it. And Tom was telling me that mindfulness is the practice of keeping your moment in now rather than the past, which is regret, or the future, which is fear.
Mm.
And it just
Wow.
clicked. I was like, wait, it's not a buzzword. It's not like, you know, just
Right, right.
transient social media bullshit. I
Yeah.
started realizing like that there was this ancient history to keep in your mind and now, because humans have always known that we're
Hmm.
temporary, you
Yeah.
know.
We
And
just put these kind of gross words on it, like mindfulness and wellness and stuff that
yeah,
get like, ugh,
that's the
but
word.
it's
Yeah.
really, it's such a deep practice. And it's so, for me, as someone who is inclined to, depression, suicidal ideation, it's really good to like practice being in the now.
Yeah,
Let's,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the future is, the past is regret and the future is this anxiety. So who wants to be there?
Oh, absolutely. And after Tom articulated that to me, I was it was just one of those sea changes where my mind
Mm,
kind of rotated 90 degrees in my head, and I'm like, I need to do that.
wow.
And so it's
Wow.
a practice, and it took a lot of willpower and a lot of effort, and getting totally sober to like get to where it was real.
Mm,
But it really does take someone articulating it, someone who's been where you're trying to be. And I'm,
uh-huh.
I'm not idolizing or like putting this person on a pedestal, because
Sure.
I talk to Tom sometimes, and we're both very human, and we exchange, like, oh, here's what's going on in my life. But
Hmm.
each of us goes different places at different times, and Tom had already been there and understood that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of like before I'd really decided I wanted to get sober, hearing sober people mention things that work for them and like storing them for later, and they clicked when they clicked.
Hmm.
Tom was the person who'd like, and I actually quoted him in that story. And it was really fun to be like, to actually be able to process it by writing the story. And then my
Hmm.
job is processing.
Mm.
I talked to these number of people and got this many hours of interview, and I need to turn it into 800 words. And that takes a lot of processing.
Yeah. Yeah. No
And
doubt.
so that really helped me figure out where I wanted to fit in that. Because I mean, when I was writing that story, I found myself like writing what I wanted to do. I'm like,
Mm,
I understand why you're doing this, and I understand now why these like card tricks are a way to keep your mind in the present.
right.
And I want to write about that and express it, and maybe it'll help someone else the way it's helping me.
Before you got this key that sort of, unlocked this place for you, did you have a period of feeling like uh, despair or victimhood or like poor me, it's kind of place of that?
Um, it was a period of intensity. I don't think that there was really a feeling of victimhood or despair, but
Mm-hmm.
just like intensity and being on edge.
Mm,
And so I think it was coming from a similar place. I think I'd been holding back on feeling
mm,
while I was trying to find a job, and while I was trying to while we were, trying to stay afloat, while everything was just really feeling like it had been collapsing around me.
right. You're just trying to hold it together.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
like it wasn't like what I was feeling wasn't like self-focused, but
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't I wasn't addressing it.
Right. It takes so much effort to keep it together.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And
totally.
so, like, if I had to put a name on it, I was finally in this place that I've been trying to get for so long, where like
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't just scrabbling to stay afloat. I wasn't like letting the family down, kind of.
Wow, that's heavy, Corbie.
Why wasn't I feeling better? Why was I like snappy and unhappy? Like, why did
Uh-huh.
I break down crying in the car on the way home? What was happening?
Wow.
So,
Did you have this sense? It sounds like you had a sense of being responsible for the family's well-being.
well, it was carrying my own weight. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
my other half, had been, we live in a capitalist economy, and my other
Yeah.
half had been pulling in most of our income, but it wasn't like I didn't feel like I was contributing like I needed to,
Mm.
having like two kids who were getting older and being more interested in stuff. And, it really sucked being like, oh crap, we can't do that right now. We can't afford that. Oh, okay, maybe after payday, and like
Mm-hmm.
it's funny because like when I was younger, dropped out of college the first time through, ended up going back to college in my late 20s and stuff like that. And I was really wondering, I'm like, was all that just thinking I was going to play in bands and make my living that way?
Mm-hmm.
Was that like more than just youthful idiocy? Was that just like selfishness and short-sightedness? And I guess that too is because I don't think that way now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that too is failing to live in the moment.
Yeah.
It's like, nope, this is the moment we're in. But like, yeah, that was a big part of the stress, was not feeling solely responsible for the family, but not,
Mm-hmm.
but more like feeling like that we all should be lifting the same weight, and I wasn't picking up my corner,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, and I imagine there's a sense in which you mentioned capitalism. There's a sense in which that produces a lot of pressure.
Oh my
Um,
God.
there's so much narrative around, pulling your own weight and lifting yourself up by your bootstraps and, all that kind of crap. It's hard to let go and just like let people take care of you or whatever.
Oh
And
yeah.
there's the reality of putting bread on the table.
Oh, and that's tough. I mean, as I identify as an artist, I make my
Yeah.
living writing. I'm a musician, like I have pencils and I sketch. I mean, I'm a very like expressive person.
Mm-hmm.
And there is that tension between I don't want to internalize these capitalist ideas where everything must be monetized, but I also have to live in a house where I don't get rained on and eat food,
Mm-hmm.
and there is that tension. And I find myself expressing all kinds of like capitalist ideas, like without even meaning to, outside of like the need to eat food and live in a house.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, and that's a whole other thing, like, being an artist in a capitalist society.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole nother podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I relate to that. I identify as an artist before like trans or queer or whatever. Artists like sort of encompasses everything, and yeah, it's an odd place to be in this world.
It is. Well, I've actually finally given myself freedom to just kind of experiment artistically and not have to write a song, but that it's okay to just pick up a bass and noodle on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Wow,
don't
and being in the moment, there's nothing like music to really put you in the moment.
Yeah, yeah. And so like even that I think like shrugs off some of the capitalist notions of take your art and make a unit.
Yes, produce.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm hoping that in my mind I'm finally knocking out some more of those capitalist notions, but they're always in there.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's deeply embedded. That wiring. So you get this diagnosis. You're a
Yeah.
young guy. Like what was your response to that?
Oh my God. So I it was like the future just narrowed to a point, because I didn't know anything about leukemia. I knew that it exists and that it's serious, which is both are true. I'd had some lumps on my neck. It was the summer of 2017, and I was starting to like just get tired really easily, but I didn't work out at the time. I didn't actually start like working out until after I got sick. And so I
Mm,
was like, oh, I just need to work out more. That's why I'm getting tired. Um, and then like finally I went to the doctor, and I was like, what's this thing? Like there was one here and here and here, and they were actually all over the place.
wow.
I did a blood test, and I ended up going to the ER at UNC on a Saturday night. Yeah, it was a Saturday night. My doctor called at like 7 or 8 p.m. I was like already like sitting down reading a comic book, like getting ready for bed, you know. Well, not getting ready for bed, but like already in my PJs, chilling out at the house.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so like I found out that I have leukemia in an ER on a Saturday night at like 2 in the morning,
Oh
just
shit.
in just the chaos of that environment,
Uh
with like and this is not a slight towards people who work in ERs. This is just the nature of an ER
Yeah.
being, what's the word for it? Triage.
Triage. Yeah. It's just
Yeah.
trauma.
Yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean,
Chaos.
you know, it's not, the bedside manner is not what you would have like up in the oncology towers.
Mm-hmm.
But getting like, finding out that you have leukemia at 35 from an ER doctor is hell,
Mm.
and so like it was some of the most extreme, almost tangible terror I've ever experienced.
Wow.
It was just like I went from just this steady state of I'm young, I'm doing my thing, to oh, I'm dying, which I
Mm.
was,
Mm.
uh, and just like, oh God, it was like psychic whiplash,
Mm.
and so like my mind just went into these terrible places where it's like I'm not going to see my kids grow up. I'm not going to get, because my wife and I, we've been together since I was 19 and she was 18, and I'm like,
Wow.
I'm not going to get to continue this,
Yeah.
this relationship that has defined me like since I was basically a kid,
Yeah.
you know, and like I couldn't. I kept thinking about all these things are going to happen without me.
Yeah.
Kids will like become teenagers, will become adults, and it'll happen without me. But I mean, you can't, it's so difficult to like, I think this is survival instinct, but you can't envision what it is to not exist.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kept thinking about, but I don't get to see it. It'll happen completely outside of my awareness. I don't get to do the
Mm-hmm.
whole Judeo-Christian thing where I sit back on the bleachers and watch it happen from a distance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and so I just, yeah,
Wow.
that was intense, and like thankfully, thankfully my first therapy started working very quickly. Thankfully,
Mm-hmm.
I got a really great doctor. She got my confidence very early.
Oh,
Um,
good.
she actually moved to California within the past year, I think, but
Mm-hmm.
she got me through the beginning of cancer in a really reassuring kind of way,
Uh-huh.
and so like
Awesome.
it took an adjustment to like get used to it, like it was a blow. Hey
That
Sam.
Leonard Nimoy picture is hilarious.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I put that up there, obvious reasons. And when I'm in work Zooms, because I'm a remote employee, everyone
Mm-hmm.
else's picture is like, them looking all professional, and mine's just Leonard Nimoy in a square neck sweater.
That's awesome. Well,
Love it.
that's interesting. That's funny because it just makes me think like when if I think if I had something like cancer, it would give me kind of carte blanche to do whatever the fuck I wanted on some level. Like I would let some things go, you know. A lot of the things that bound me up, I think I hope I would let them go.
I lost my fear of heights as soon as I got cancer.
Interesting.
Having witnessed the actual threat, the conceptual threat just evaporated.
Wow.
And
Wow.
like one of the first things Rachel, my other half, and I did was we went ziplining. We went out
Awesome.
to the mountains and we went ziplining at the Nana Hill Outdoor Center,
Uh-huh.
and so you're like hundreds of feet above the ground, just zooming along on these long wires. And I was like, I stepped off with no fear. I'm like, this is incredible.
Really?
So that
Wow.
it's, yeah, you let some things go, and like
Uh-huh.
it's funny because like it does embolden you. And actually my therapist, you've probably heard the term post-traumatic growth. That's what my therapist told me about,
Oh, interesting.
when he was like seeing some of the things that like I was emboldened to do, and like
Mm-hmm.
some of like the, because after my first go with cancer, I came away with it just like not feeling unstoppable, but feeling totally stoppable. And that made me just want to experience everything.
Mm, mm.
You know?
Where were you physically at this time? Like, I
Um,
mean, how is it impacting your body?
it it's funny because leukemia is a cancer of the blood, and
Hmm.
it had sapped my energy. So when I was sick, or the times I've been sick, it saps your energy, your lymph nodes just swell up huge. That's like the physical symptom. But one good thing about it is a lot of the current therapies, they bring your energy back very quickly.
Oh, that's great.
So as it's funny because it's on the one hand, it's this really dangerous, aggressive cancer, which is accurate to what I have.
Hmm.
But on the other, like I've never had to have surgery, I've never had to go through chemo.
Mm,
My
really?
my therapy is this like immunotherapy that's pills, and I
Okay.
take pills, and within a few days to a week, my lymph nodes shrink down, my energy starts to return, stuff like that. And so like I don't well, and that's the other thing, stereotypes. I don't
Uh-huh.
look like cancer. I don't act like cancer. I have a very
Uh-huh.
serious, it was, you know, considered terminal until about 10, 11 years ago, form of cancer.
Mm, hmm.
But I exercise daily,
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah,
in the
you
best
run
shape of
like
my
a
life.
motherfucker.
I'm healthy, but I'm sick.
Right.
It's really done a number on like it's not even a continuum. It's not even a binary, healthy and sick, and I've got a
Mm,
whole set of theories about like people's concepts of healthy and sick and how
mm.
it ties into like COVID denialism, but I don't want to totally go on a tangent.
Interesting. You've caught my curiosity for sure. Yeah, so you're holding this place of sick and well. And well, first of all, I want to ask what the protocol is like. What's in the pill? What does the pill do?
Um, I don't know.
You don't know.
I mean, in short, they're like protein blockers and they
Uh-huh.
break down like the cancer cells and stuff like that.
Okay.
But I don't know enough about the chemistry of what the pill does.
Okay. But it makes
Really.
you feel better quite quickly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it
Uh-huh.
brings things under control quite quickly. I mean, I got to take them indefinitely, and they've
Uh-huh.
got a handful of little side effects, and like I can't eat grapefruit and stuff like that. But I mean, compared to what a lot of people with cancer go through, it's not bad.
Right, right.
So I do have that. I have energy. Like I don't like lose my hair and stuff,
Hmm.
well, any more than nature already.
I wasn't gonna say a word.
No, I'll beat you to it. Um, but yeah, like yeah. And I was really, my first therapy had even fewer side effects, and it was
Hmm.
really shocking when it failed
Mm.
after just a few years. But my current one, it's working.
So you're doing okay, and then you had this experience of failure, like it came back or whatever,
Yeah,
it reemerged.
it's funny how it worked because it was the end of 2020, beginning of 2021. So I mean, the entire human race is going through this existential crisis,
Hmm.
you know, and then like I'd gotten to where like I was running so fast, like I could break a 21-minute 5K, like I was hauling ass.
Wow.
And then it became incrementally harder to run at these high speeds that I'd like worked my way up to. I
Hmm.
didn't know what was going on. I was like, am I overdoing it? Am I this and that? And I kept on getting slower and slower. And, just long story short, I went to my doctor and they're like, oh, you're anemic.
Hmm.
You're lightly anemic. And
Hmm.
you wouldn't be able to tell that you were anemic, except that you're like a high performance athlete. And so you're expecting your body to do these crazy things. And
Hmm.
it's like, et cetera, et cetera. And so I actually started feeling the symptoms a lot sooner than I would have if I wasn't
Oh, because you were so healthy.
a runner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I started getting more and more anemic, and like
Mm.
So
Was that
by
scary?
it was confusing.
Okay.
It was confusing first. I think I couldn't accept. I couldn't accept until I got my diagnosis, actually, until I got the results of a bone marrow biopsy. Those hurt, by the way.
Ooh.
Um, yeah, they drill into the back of your pelvis.
Wow.
I've had, I think, four of those. They hurt
Oh
like,
God, Corbie. They drill into the back of your pelvis?
yeah, because that's one of your thicker bones. And so that's where they can get the marrow and see, like, if there's, because that's the leukemia
Oh,
really manifests in your marrow where your blood's made.
oh Jesus.
But yeah, I was at the point where like I could hardly walk. I had to like take a nap during the day just to get through the day. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
just like I was like plummeting by the time like I was going to the hospital regularly to find out what was going on. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I was in denial. Not denial, that's the wrong word. I couldn't even conceptualize that my cancer was back until I got the results of my bone marrow biopsy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And at that point, like I was having to like get in a wheelchair to get around the hospital and stuff. Like I was walking
Mm-hmm.
with cane and things. And this is just a few months after being able to run like, a 620 mile.
Right. Right. So it was quickly, really.
Yeah, yeah, it really
Yeah.
was. I'd gone from being in that kind of shape to hardly being able to walk to hardly being able to like stay awake.
Wow.
So yeah, it was I probably came closer to dying than I realized, but that's analyzing the past, so I don't think about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. That's done. That
Yeah,
happened. Yeah.
yeah. So
Huh.
and
So
yeah,
so you went through that, and then I imagine you got back on those pills, or you got on those pills and started to recuperate.
yeah, I did. I'm on a clinical trial, and that was a rough decision because like I'm a very pro science person, but like when you get on a clinical trial, or at least the one I'm on, they're like, oh, part of this is your medication will be covered, so you won't have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really rebelled against that having to be part of the calculus. I was like, this almost feels like a form of extortion. You
Mm.
know, like I think that it made it harder for me to think clearly about, whether it made it harder for me to think clearly about whether this medicine was a good idea, having to like think about economics,
Mm-hmm.
having to think in capitalistic terms about and so that
Yeah.
was that was rough and that was strange.
Interesting.
And I'm glad I'm on it now
Yeah.
because it's working. But my health was plummeting. I was really like confused, not in denial, very confused.
Yeah.
And then I had to think in terms of, oh, here's a treatment that I can afford better
Uh-huh.
versus here's it made I was like that interfered with my thought process of which treatment gives me a better chance of survival. And I
Interesting.
resented I resented that capitalism like was that far into my healthcare.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, again, that's a whole nother place to explore. That sort of it's like this parasite. This,
Yeah.
yeah, you're just trying to get better, and then there's this capitalist parasite that's, yeah. Well, anyway, so you're going through that, and is your wife like, is she like, Corbie, just take the fucking pill or whatever? Is she, or what was she doing at the time?
We're like we have a really great relationship where, and part of it is because we each make our own decisions.
Yeah.
And so like from what I remember, I like expressed a lot of my concerns. I expressed why it was frustrating that like there was a money element to it, and from what I remember, she was kind of like, when I told her, I'm like, okay, well, if I take this one, that'll cover the medicine. She's like, that's easy, you know,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but
But she knows you so deeply.
in our dynamic, that doesn't mean you should do that. It
Right.
means that sounds like a no-brainer, but you got to figure this out yourself.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, that's good to have somebody that sort of like both has the clarity and has your side, your corner is in your
Yeah.
corner.
I mean,
Yeah.
obviously she'll tell me when I'm being a dumbass, but that wasn't one of those situations. I think in her mind she was like, he'll figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
just needs to talk through the process, you know.
Mm-hmm. So you got there. How is that? So you've been living with it now for a couple years. How does it impact you like on the daily? Do you think about it or do you
Not really.
not really? Mm-hmm.
No, not really. I mean, it's like, I mean, I have cancer is as much a part of my daily narrative as I'm balding or I'm 6 feet tall.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, these are just kind of aspects of my physical self.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, obviously at the beginning, I had to like learn to live with that phrase, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
cancer is a very loaded phrase. But no, I think that I mostly think of it in terms of like cost, you know, because
That's real.
we're in a lot of damn debt only because we have physical bodies, and this is what our physical bodies decided to.
Wow, that's fucked up.
Oh, it's so fucked up. It's so fucked up. And you know,
Mm.
I actually spent a lot of 2022 just like feeling psychologically crushed by the monetary debt, not by the like experience of cancer,
Mm-hmm.
by the monetary debt, because that is actually much more stressful than like living with cancer.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's wild. Corbie,
Yeah.
are you in a, do you accept like, do you have a Venmo? Do you accept contributions? Or are you not doing that?
I mean, I do have a Venmo and a PayPal. I would. I have not sought them, but I will not turn them down.
Okay, well, we'll post them at the end of this. So just,
Okay.
I like to give people the opportunity.
Yeah. So my
Um,
thought process is we're all part of this same horrible machine.
yes, we are.
And I got how to articulate this. And like any help, any monetary help someone gave me would be less that they have to fight the same machine they're trapped in.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
I'm not going to turn it down, but I also don't want anyone to feel pressured because I recognize that we're all crushed by this damn thing.
right. Yes. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? So that's the best I can say it. I mean, I've got a whole suite of thoughts about it, but you know.
Yeah, same, same. I mean, I usually put up my info just because as an artist, I feel, kind of socially under supported, and
Mhm.
it's a way that we can all help one another. I try to give where I can, and it's just something we can do. But I was thinking, Corby, that I was diagnosed with, this is nothing like cancer, but I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia about 20 years ago. Went through a
Okay.
really brutal time with it for a while. But always had this attitude of kind of like, fuck fibromyalgia. Like I don't have it. And I think that really helped me kind of push through it and be like, it's just not going to rule me. It's not going to rule my day, because I saw a lot of people with fibro kind of take it on as an identity. And I imagine this happens with cancer a lot too. Kind of people, it becomes their primary identity, and everything is cancer, and everything, like with fibro, everything is fibro, and I'm in pain all the time, and I have to do this, and this, and people don't understand, and it becomes this whole like spider web of I don't know, self-pity, but it's also against capital. I don't know. It's very complicated, but this really happens with cancer too, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't if that's how someone, you know, if that's how someone
Self-identifies.
feels and self-identifies, you
Yeah.
know, that's fine. And I feel like I've fallen into the same trap because when I try to write about it,
Mm-hmm.
especially when I write about it for like a magazine that I don't
Mm-hmm.
usually write for, the editor doesn't know what to do with it, and it comes out as a cancer identity piece rather than a nuanced piece that I'm trying to write. And that's one reason the editor writer relationship has to be a relationship. You know,
Mm-hmm.
can't just be like a filter.
Mm-hmm.
But
Interesting.
I feel like I just um, I feel like I U-turned that. I thought you might have had a different question. Sorry.
That's okay. No, I was just thinking that so fibro uh reemerged recently in my life. Like I said, it's been almost 20 years, and I am experiencing a recent bout of it. And my initial response was like, God damn it, really? You know, I'm already in pain. Like, fuck this. And then, it got to a place of like acceptance and like, okay, and I'm not going to burden everybody with this narrative because nobody wants to fucking hear it. Nobody wants to hear that you're in pain all the time, right? So, how did you address this kind of, I mean, it's kind of compelling, right? This identity, you know?
It's funny. I got this from Rachel. She was the first one to say this, but it's the least interesting thing about me.
Right.
You know,
Wow.
and once she said that, I was like, "That's so true."
Wow.
And so
Bring it
like,
home, Rachel.
yeah, yeah, she's
That's awesome.
she can say in like 5 or 6 words what take me like several essays to stumble it down. But
Totally.
so like I want to be open about it, because
Hmm.
it's real and it's there. But
Hmm.
I'm a runner and I'm a cook and I'm trying to be a good dad. I don't know that I'm succeeding. I don't think anyone ever feels like they're good at this. I'm a
Hmm.
musician.
Hmm.
I'm a writer. I don't know. I know
Right.
too much about Star Trek. That's all much more interesting than has cancer. It's a freaking genetic accident. Who cares, Star Trek has really it's right in there with like listening to good music in terms of like helping me like navigate this wild shit that's happened to our family.
Hmm.
Giving me language for it and making me feel less alone, because if someone
Hmm.
has written about this to write it into a script or write it into a song, then it's
Hmm.
universal.
Hmm. Right. And it gives you sort of an emotional outlet too, I imagine.
Yeah.
So, Corby, I'm going to ask you this question directly. Why live?
Why not? I mean, I've with limited exceptions, I've just always wanted to keep seeing stuff and experiencing stuff and
Hmm.
eating food and listening to music.
Hmm.
It's
You enjoy it.
I do, and it's like I recognize that that's an accident of chemistry, you
Uh-huh.
know,
Uh-huh. But
but I've,
also, like, I think what I hear from many people is a curiosity.
oh yeah, yeah.
And I
I've
hear
already,
that in you. Yeah.
I've always wanted to, see what's around the next bend. And,
Hmm.
it's having, it's been tested, my mortality's really been tested, but I
Yeah.
know now that I have a really strong will to live, because I definitely see people who don't, like I see people like in the cancer hospital, or even just who I talk to, who do
Yeah.
not have a zest for life. And I don't know if that's chemical. I don't know if that's experience. I don't know if it's some mix of the two, but
Yeah. For me, I've always been sort of, whenever I felt like I just can't go on anymore, there is like this intense curiosity and a memory of joy, you know, that keeps me going.
I like that. A memory of joy. I, when I'm in a really dark spot, I don't remember what that feels like. Like I
Mm.
intellectually remember that I've felt better, but I don't remember what that feels like. And so
Hmm.
like, that's something that I need to work on, is like when I'm in a really dark spot, like not just moving forward out of habit, but moving forward more purposefully.
Mm-hmm. So, is there anything you want to leave people with?
Other than watch more Star Trek.
Those words of wisdom, words of wisdom, my friend.
Uh, Maybe you can survive a lot more than you think.
Mm.
I never saw myself, and it's funny because saying this out loud, it feels like inspirational nonsense, but I also never saw myself like facing legit mortal threats and
Yeah.
becoming a what feels like a better person out of it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I feel like if I can do it, anyone can, because I'm not that special,
Uh-huh.
you know?
Uh-huh.
I don't
That's great.
yeah, I don't see me as anyone like inspirational or whatever. And I think that's what makes it important is that you can be just whoever, just some random person, and almost dying doesn't have to sink you. It can make you better almost. I don't know. This
Wow.
sorry, this feels like it's getting really like hallmarky.
It's not. It's okay, Corbie. I think that's a really important thing to say. I think that's a really, and I'm sure someone needs to hear that because we all get in that place where like, I just can't, and to know that like you as a regular guy did is very helpful. So I appreciate that. And I
Thanks.
appreciate you. Thanks
Thank you,
for
Sam.
talking with me today.
Thank you for asking good questions and listening. Game recognized game, you know?
Thank you. Wow, that's high
Yeah.
praise. So, what's your Venmo or
Uh,
PayPal?
my PayPal is Corbie Hill at Gmail. I'll have to look up what my Venmo is because I've used it like 3 times. Actually, wait, probably have
Or
it
you can
on.
send it to me or whatever.
Yeah, let me email you. Let me email
Sure.
you those because I don't know. I swore I wouldn't turn 40 and like no longer know what technology is, but now I'm like Venmo, what's that? So we have it, but never use it.
Mhm. Bye, Cracky.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
my
I'll
friends.
email you those.
Thank you. It's been a
Thanks
real
for having me.
pleasure.
Yeah,
Ciao.
live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.